Welcome to the great port city of Halifax. Hi, I'm Don Connolly, and this is the famous schooner Bluenose II, an internationally recognized symbol of the pride that Nova Scotians and Haligonians, as we affectionately call one another, feel for the history of our city. The city of Halifax's history begins just back there, where Colonel Edward Cornwallis came ashore in 1749 and founded the first English town in Canada. But as you can see from the skyline behind me, Halifax is much more than just a quaint old port town clinging to former glories. Halifax is a city which in the last 15 years has changed dramatically. In today's Halifax, the new and the old stand comfortably alongside one another, testaments to what has gone before and what surely is to come. As your host for the next half hour, I'm going to show you a proud city with an honorable past. A city excited about its prospects for the future. But first, a whirlwind look at some of the sights and sounds, some of the people that make this a very special city, unique in Canada. This is my city, Halifax. Now that you've had a quick look around town, it might be time for the next few minutes to look at some of the myths about Halifax. First, the hinterland myth. It runs something like this. Halifax is located 1,000 or so miles from central Canada, and as such, is beyond the limits of the known world. May we gently suggest, centralist cousins, that the opposite is the case. By air, Halifax is just an hour or so away from Toronto, Montreal, Boston, New York, St. John's, Newfoundland. In fact, Europe, the Middle East, Africa, the world to the east is just a daydream away. As the unofficial trade and commercial center of Atlantic Canada, road and rail links make moving in and out of Halifax quick and convenient. But it is the port itself which dominates everyday life here. As the largest ice-free port on the east coast of North America, millions of tons of merchandise worth millions of dollars move through Halifax Harbor daily. In recent years, the natural advantages of the harbor have been best utilized by the rapid development of the high-technology container terminals. The ships that move these goods also bring us into contact with the people and the commerce of other countries. They give us a sense of being linked in a special way to the broader world. But it is the mighty North Atlantic Ocean that defines the physical shape of the city. On the far side of the peninsula, a sliver of ocean called the Northwest Arm marks the western boundary. And to the east is Halifax Harbor, guarded at its entrance by first McNabb Island and then George's Island, decreasing in width between the two bridges to form the Narrows, and then widening again into Bedford Basin in the north. It's all this water that gives the city that saltwater tang. The population of the city isn't quite 150,000, but the metropolitan area supports nearly twice that number of people. So, of course, all this water does create something of a headache for the thousands of people who move on and off the peninsula to work, shop, and visit. Most of these commuters use one of the two suspension bridges spanning the harbor and linking Halifax with its sister city Dartmouth and other nearby communities. And then there's the Halifax-Dartmouth Ferry.
Perhaps the best deal in town at 35 cents a crossing.
The water, the harbor, the Atlantic Ocean, they're more than part of our natural heritage, important cultural and trading links, dramatic boundaries to the city itself. Of course, Haligonians love the water. We swim in it, sail on it, we fish in it, we paint it, we gaze out at it, we smell it. But there's more to it than that. It's difficult to talk about the subtle but pervasive power that the ocean exerts on a coastal people without sounding maudlin. But ask people who have moved away what they miss the most. Ask people who have stayed why they've stayed. And I think more often than not, you'll find that the ocean is close to the heart of the matter.
My reasons for staying in Halifax, vary with the times. But I think, first of all, it's because I'm near the water. I love the water. The only other place I've enjoyed as much as Halifax is in Vancouver, and for the obvious reason there was water close by. That's a maritime thing. The other reason, and I think this is the main reason, is the challenge. There's infinite challenge here for a black person who chooses to be an actor.
One of the things that I liked after a long time in Ottawa was the fact that it was a more congenial winter, which is to say there's a good deal less of it. All in all, I think that Halifax, because of its historical associations, because of the sea, because of its accessibility, is really one of the nice places to live in.
Being a policeman, you have all the opportunities to see all of Halifax, to work with the people who are probably the greatest people in probably Canada, sort of easy, laid-back type of people we are. So it's quite enjoyable to be a policeman in Halifax.
When I started my business 4 years ago, the city was ripe with potential. I sensed it at that point in time, and now it's borne fruit. It's a very exciting city to be in.
Simply put, there's not too much of anything here. Because of that, you don't get tired of it. There are no excesses. If you were living in the middle of the prairies, there'd be too much land. If you're living in Sable Island, there'd be too much sea. Our economy is mixed. Everything is very mixed. I like it. It gives you a good broad base and many directions to travel. I think that's what's kept me here.
Halifax is the town that there are a lot of segregationists here. The policy in this neighborhood, as was stated before, has been, look, let's hire whites.
The 60s, yippies and street riots. They've become yuppies, upscale achievers in the 80s. On our next inquiry, what has happened to the idealism of the late 60s? Jerry Rubin and Abby Hoffman and local activists Alistair Watt and Rocky Jones talk about how they see things now. Inquiry, Wednesday at 7 on CBC.
There was a time when Halifax was considered a have-not city, but that's not so today. Recently, Halifax has solidified its position as the mercantile capital of the Maritimes, its economy boosted by offshore exploration. While no gas has come ashore yet, there's a thriving supply business for rigs drilling in the Atlantic. And this new optimism, generated by the offshore, has brought a changing face to downtown Halifax. The once relatively uninspiring skyline of low-rise granite and sandstone buildings is now punctuated by the ultra-modern towers of financial institutions. And the change goes on. The construction sites with their ever-present cranes are commonplace these days. The long-promised World Trade and Convention Center is now open for business. It soon will have as company new hotels, more office towers, and renovated turn-of-the-century buildings. While Halifax can't be compared for sheer size to the cities to the west, its blending of old and new give it a character few other cities can claim. This is historic properties on the Halifax waterfront, a marvelous reconstruction project begun in the mid-1970s. Up until now, there has been a carefully planned and executed renewal of warehouses and storefronts meant to give visitors and natives alike a taste of the flavor of Halifax of the 18th and 19th centuries. The contents of the buildings, of course, have changed dramatically since the days when these buildings used to store the booty, which was brought here by privateers and buccaneers. Today, on historic properties and in the whole of renewed downtown Halifax, there are a tremendous variety of bars, restaurants, and shops. The success of the early part of this imaginative project can be measured in the renewed enthusiasm there is for more reconstruction in this part of downtown Halifax. Founders Square, for example, in which Joseph Howe's newspaper and 13 others were published in the 1800s, is also in the throes of a major transformation project, integrating the clarity and grace of the old with the conveniences of contemporary design. Another colorful reminder of our heritage is this larger-than-life-sized wall mural, which takes us back to the days when the town criers proclaimed the news and delivered birthday greetings to passengers on the ferry.
I bring thee greetings from the city of Kingston!
A tradition reintroduced in 1978, Halifax is now host to the annual International Town Criers Championship, an event attracting renowned criers from around the world.
Good luck to you one and all, and God save our Queen!
But the old-world charm of Halifax is not confined solely to events like this or to the architecture of the downtown business district. For instance, this gracious building, the residence of the Lieutenant Governor of Nova Scotia, was built more than 170 years ago and is the oldest consecutively occupied mansion in North America. Spared the devastation of the 1917 explosion that killed 2,000 and leveled much of the city, the residential South End retains the elegance and prosperity of another era. Its tree-lined boulevards and rambling Victorian mansions make these some of the most expensive properties in the city. We move now to the Hydrostone District, a 10-block enclave in the working-class North End. Built on the site of some of the worst devastation of the 1917 explosion, it gets its name from the kind of concrete block used in its construction. And the Hydrostone homeowners are proud that their area remains a desirable address. And when it comes to a desirable address, nothing compares with the Northwest Arm, or simply the Arm, as Haligonians call it. The Arm is also the site of a number of private clubs, including the Wag Waltic and the Royal Nova Scotia Yacht Squadron, the first in North America. Nearly 200 acres of forest on the southern tip of the peninsula help give Halifax its reputation as a city of trees. Once a key to the defense of the harbor, Point Pleasant Park is leased to the city for 999 years, for which it pays the British Crown a shilling a year. Nature trails, a sandy beach, monuments to sailors and seamen, and the remains of fortifications make Point Pleasant Park a popular recreation area where cars are not allowed and policemen patrol on horseback. These imposing cast-iron gates open into a different kind of escape from the hustle and bustle of the city. Reputed to be the oldest formal Victorian gardens on the continent, the Halifax Public Gardens encompass almost 17 acres of land in the heart of the city.
Another myth that really should be dispelled for the nonsense that it is that Upper Canada and higher education are somehow synonymous. The fact is that Halifax has 5 universities and 2 colleges, giving it the highest ratio post-secondary facilities to population in North America. And in case anyone should think that the educational standards are low, consider this: that for decades, the graduates of professional and undergraduate schools in Halifax have played an integral role in the academic, legal, medical, scientific, business, and political life of Canada.
Students are drawn to these universities and research institutions from across Canada and around the world. And with 8 hospitals, the city is also a major North American center for medical and cancer treatment.
Touching!
Reminders of the city's military history are everywhere, but none as prominent as Citadel Hill. The hill has been the site of 4 different forts designed to protect the city and its world-class harbor. Today, the Citadel, a National Historic Park operated by Parks Canada, is the country's most visited historic site.
With saluting cartridge, out!
Colorful armed guards in 1865 uniform recall the days of the Imperial Army. And a cannon, strategically mounted on the walls, fires a noonday gun, a practice which has continued without interruption since the city was founded.
Fire!
On the eastern slope of Citadel Hill sits the most familiar landmark in Halifax, the town clock. It's been there since 1803, keeping almost perfect time. As it has been throughout its history, Halifax today is Canada's major naval port. It's not uncommon to see NATO's standing Atlantic fleet emerging from the fog that frequently shrouds Halifax harbor. The military presence in Halifax is of great importance to the economy. With 8,000 people employed by Maritime Command, the forces inject millions of dollars yearly into the coffers of local business.
Here in the very heart of downtown Halifax, you can easily see a phenomenon which says a great deal about the way in which the city's changed in the last few years. In a 4 or 5 square block area of the city, there's been an explosion of eateries and drinkeries aimed primarily at the young.
I'm gonna move way out to the outskirts of town. Yes, I'm gonna move out, baby, way out to the outskirts of town. 'Cause I don't want nobody hanging around.
Many years ago, when I was a student at a small university not far from Halifax, we used to sneak away to the big city to taste such forbidden fruit as draft beer and tavern steaks. We sampled such decadent big city fare in dark, men-only beer halls, where there was a sense that all of the patrons were doing something vaguely naughty. Some of the old haunts are still here, and many are gone to be replaced by all manner of light, bright, and lively spots, patronized equally by the men and the women of the city.
Checking up on my baby, find out what you're putting down. Checking up on my baby, I wanna know what you're putting down. It's been a mighty long time since I've seen her around. Didn't call she right, didn't send no telegram. Didn't call she right, didn't send no telegram. I don't mind it, baby, don't care no more. I am.
This is the Carlton Hotel, in some ways the perfect melding of the new and old Halifax. It was built of stone removed from the French fortress Louisbourg after its fall in 1759. It now houses the oldest tavern in Halifax, one of the busiest bars in Halifax, an elegant restaurant, and the Halifax Press Club.
And for something a bit more raucous, the Misty Moon Cabaret, where the action doesn't stop till 3 a.m.
Do you want to jump to? Do you want to jive, baby? Do you
for those whose tastes tend more toward the classical, Halifax is home to Symphony Nova Scotia. The nationally acclaimed Neptune Theatre.
Welcome to Berlin. Willkommen, bienvenue. Welcome. Fremde, étranger, stranger. Glücklich zu sehen. Je suis enchanté. Happy to see you. Bleibe. Reste, stay.
The Atlantic Ballet Company. We can go to the ballet, the theater, the symphony, and the art galleries, but basically we're an unpretentious lot. We like to eat our homemade French fries on the sidewalks of Spring Garden Road. We like to buy our produce fresh from the farmer's market in a converted brewery.
Fish, please.
But most of all, Haligonians like to serve fish for dinner, knowing it was swimming in the Atlantic Ocean only hours before. This is a maritime seafood restaurant, which just happens to be operated by a very old friend of mine, Rob McKelvey, another adopted Haligonian who happens to come from southern Ontario. Hello, Robert.
How are you tonight, Don?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Well, not too bad. I got a real special treat for you tonight, Don. Nice, fresh Nova Scotia lobster.
Well, Robert, that's a really cute crustacean, but the truth of the matter is, Robert, I've been passing myself off here for the last half hour or so as Mr. Halifax. I think it's time now that you shared with the people my terrible Cuisinary secret.
Don, when was the last time you had any seafood?
Never, Robert.
It's too bad, but I suppose you're going to have your usual again tonight?
I'm afraid so.
10-ounce New York strip loin with a side order of steamed mussels, perhaps?
Yep, you can hold the mussels and I'll have that steak medium rare.
Okay, I'll send it back.
Thank you, Robert. We hope that you've enjoyed this kaleidoscopic look at Halifax. There are, of course, lots of other things to see and do in this lovely town, but we hope that that's something you'll find out for yourself sometime firsthand. This is a country with thousands of nice places to live, big cities and small towns. Halifax's special grace is its ability to combine the beauties of the small town and the big city and the ocean. We hope that you'll come and see us sometime. And if you do, we'll bid you 100,000 welcomes.